Well, as everybody knows, it's been a really hot summer, and I haven't been doing a lot of shipping this summer. I have been shipping throughout the summer the hard goods, but I've been shipping fewer fish than I normally would, and so I've spent the summer. It's been really busy here, upgrading the filtration, upgrading how the place is set up, and as you'll see changes in the new website page I just recently put up. I'm focusing more on the few species that everybody wants, and I'm going to maintain a lot of the others that I'm keeping. I don't want to get rid of anything that's rare or whatever, but it will be it'll just pop up at the website once in a while when they're available. So, but at this point, I'm trying to focus on the green dragons, the Zophophorus montezuma, and the Cracodon reds, and the Poecilia volifera. So anyway, I got those guys going. And about 22 years ago, when I was first setting all this up, and I was first, looking at producing fish in larger quantities, I needed to make a brine shrimp hatcher. So I went down to Home Depot with no idea what I was looking for, or what I was going to do, or what I had in mind. But I figured I would just wander around the store and find bits and pieces of things that might fit together and create some kind of a container with a funneled bottom that had a means for an air stone to come up at the bottom and throw up an airstream and hatch brine shrimp. So at that time I started off in the plant pot section. So I go through the plant pots, and I was messing around putting different types of pots together and trying to find out how I could do this sort of a thing, what would work, what wouldn't work. And I gradually started to form something that was going to work. So the original plant pot is here, and when you take it apart, what it is these two pots that just happen to fit together the right amount of distance so that this funnel could be attached to the bottom of the larger pot, which had the bottom cut out and glued in place, and then that would sit just right into the bottom pot. And then there were these little rubber bumper things that would fit into the funnel, and they would work perfectly for a piece of rigid 1/4-inch aquarium line tubing. So it all worked great. And at that time when I bought that first pot, I was just so amazed by the serendipity of, wow, this fits, wow, this works, that I bought two setups just in case one day I would ever become big enough to need two of them. Well, each one can hatch 4 liters of brine shrimp at a time. Eventually I needed the second one, and I set that guy up about 6-7 years ago. So I've had the 2 of them running now, the one running for over 22 years. And they're really durable, they're easy to clean, they work perfectly. And so I thought, well, what are the odds I can walk back into a Home Depot and find the same things again? I know that the same pots aren't available. I've looked for them in the past, often thinking in the back of my mind, wow, there's going to come a time I want to make more of these. Am I going to be able to do it? And each time I've looked, I haven't seen the pots that I saw that first time. I hadn't seen a lot of the things I used. So I decided, well, okay, let's just see if it can be done. So I go off to Home Depot just to walk around and see if I can put together 2 more breeders similar to the ones I made the first time. And those were made 20 years ago. And I was amazed at the time that I made them, walking around going, wow, this really fits into this just like so it'll work. And this will work, could that be done again? And I've often been hesitant to give talks on the brine shrimp hatchers because I've not known if anybody else would be able to go in and have everything fit like happened. So I thought, what the heck, we'll go in and we'll see if we can do it again. So I went determined to make 2 more brine shrimp hatchers. Now, as I start here with the things that I came home with, I don't have any idea whether they're going to work or not. But I would assume that if you're seeing this, it worked. Otherwise, I wouldn't post it if it didn't work. So anyway, as we go along here, we're going to discover it for ourselves. So the first thing I had to do is find automotive funnels and see if they had the same funnels that I found 20 years ago. Well, it turns out that they did have the same funnels that we had before, but they don't come in the pretty colors that the others were in. Before they were yellow, blue, and red, but in this case they're black. Now, black isn't a bad color, except that brine shrimp, of course, like to be under light. Light helps hatch them. You're going to have light over the top of them. It's not ideal to have sides of a container that is going to absorb light really a lot. But I don't expect that they won't have a problem. They'll probably hatch as they should, and they're only alive for 36 hours. So hey, they got to get over it. So anyway, so this has a little thing in it that comes apart. that goes ahead and opens them up. And so we're only going to use one of these for each of these guys. So now we know that we've got the funnels. So we'll set them aside. We'll need them here in a moment. Okay, so what the next thing I needed to do was find out if I could find some pot planters that fit together like the other ones did. Now, they're awesome. They really are great. At the time, I only needed one. Never thought I would need two. Now I need four. And so I did buy an extra one that I didn't use for 4 or 5 years, but now I've had the two of them running for over 10 years. One of them has been running now for over 22 years. But anyway, so I went looking to see what I could find. They had two styles there that would do this, that would fit in such a way that this would work. One of them was like big, round, black, kind of ugly. I couldn't be able to get it into the space that I had for it. And then they had these. These are these blue and red pots, and they come in two sizes. So what you want to do with it, and you know, man, like, you know, you can buy those brine shrimp hatchers that you get online and such, and they come in a little stand and all of that, and they, you know, hatch like a tablespoon of brine shrimp eggs, and they run like 25 bucks. You can do that if you want. This is going to hatch you 2 gallons worth of brine shrimp eggs, and these are $2 a piece. So I think this was $3. So, you know, we're not talking a whole lot of money here. So if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But anyway, so you take the bigger one and you stick it in the smaller one. So what's going to happen is now there's a space that's created. We don't know what that distance is yet. We've got to find that out in a moment. But there's a space that's going to be created between the bottom of this top pot, which is going to be about here, and the bottom of the bottom pot. We don't know how long that space is, and we're hoping that that space will be the same size as the distance from here to here. And if it's not, then we're going to have to do some tinkering. But anyway, so the best way to find that out is with this, and we're going to mark the side that tells us how much distance there is. So now we know that the distance we have from that mark to the bottom of the bottom pot is going to end up running about 5 inches. Distance from here to here is 6 inches. Cool. We can work with that. Just means cutting this back about 1 inch and doing that. So those are bottom. Next thing, and this was the big money items, were the marine sealant. You need sealant because you got to glue the funnels into these guys. This is going to hold everything together. And this is where the money went. These tubes are like $8 a piece. That was probably more than I wanted to spend, but I can use this stuff in the fish room anywhere. So I got 2 tubes of that. And then lastly, you need these. These are rubber bumpers, little rubber bumpers. These guys, hopefully, we'll find out, when you open this and put them in to the bottom of the funnel you're going to use, they should fit real snug in there. And this hole just happens to be the same width as the 1/4 inch rigid tubing you have in an aquarium. So this will be in the bottom of your funnel. This is going to slide up through the rubber bumper, and it is actually watertight. And like I say, it's been going for 20 years, and I've got the original rubber bumpers in them, so they've never even opened up or worn over the years. And then you have, of course, airline tubing here going off to your air source. So that's all your supplies that you need. So the first thing we need to do, before we do anything, is cut these little silly handles off of the funnels, because they're not going to fit into the bottom of this. You can see here about what the diameter is. You'll see that they're going to fit pretty well. So we'll come right back and we'll get those cut off, and we'll pick up from here. So while I was away here trying to go ahead and cut this funnel down to make up for, to create 5 inches and to find out how best to get it to work into the bottom of the pot, then it occurred to me, I mean, this is the size funnel that was in the last group of the brine shrimp hatchers. But I thought, wow, there's still a smaller funnel in this kit. So I went ahead and I measured it, and sure enough, it's 5 inches. So I don't need to do any cutting. So this is going to work. And then there is some serendipity here. When you put this into the bottom of this pot, there's a recessed area in the bottom that this filter, that this funnel happens to fit right over the top of. And there's a lip on the funnel, and there's, when you cut this where it's molded, it leaves a lip inside the pot. So you'll have a surface where you can put the marine glue to hold this into it. That should really provide a nice strong bond. Then, of course, when you go to put it into here, it should work really well. Now, in the bottom here, which isn't ideal, are little holes that are set in around this opening spot where we're going to put the funnel, and we don't want this to leak. And not that it would, it might not leak at all, but when the time comes, I'm going to go ahead and I'll put dabs of marine sealant over those holes, just for some insurance, to make sure that this isn't going to leak. And then, so essentially then what we're doing is we're going to cut out this part of the bottom of the pot, and then this funnel here will fit in here nice and snug like this, and then that will sit inside that pot. So get that done, I'll get right back to you. So I went ahead and cut the bottom out of this pot here, and you can see these are the holes I was talking about. They're definitely going to need to be filled in. And here is the funnel. Had to cut away the little like side piece that sticks out on this one as well, so that it would fit. But when you put this on in, it fits in there nice and snug and tight, and it looks great. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that sucker into place. There we go. Glue that guy into place, and we'll come back when that's done. So it's the next day, and the stuff's had an opportunity to glue. It's not the prettiest job, but these are going to last forever. These funnels are glued solidly in place. So now, if we put this guy into this, it should fit perfectly. Let's see what it does. So now the next thing we need to do is put a hole into the bottom of this so that we can have the airline come up through the bottom of it. So that's why I had the drill over there out, because in the past I've just drilled a hole in here. But if you look on the bottom of this, I don't think the camera's going to pick this up, but there's a molding circle that's naturally just in the bottom of this pot, which would be perfect to follow through and just cut that out and then use that as the center spot on here for having the funnel fit right in below. So I'll go ahead with a Dremel tool and do that. I've been doing all this, by the way, with the Dremel tool, and very important tool to have in a fish room. So anyway, we'll be back once we get these guys drilled out. All right, so we got the bottom drilled out of the smaller pot. Now the small pots also come with a bottom that comes right off, and I'm assuming this will be sturdy enough without the bottom. I probably won't end up using it, but I went ahead and drilled the bottom as well, so I can try and see how much sturdier, if it's worth the trouble to have this attached to it. Anyway, so that's the bottom in here. So we put these guys together, and your hose is going to go right up through here. Now the next thing to check out is this is the rubber bumper, and with a 1/4-inch piece of rigid aquarium tubing. And the aquarium tubing will go into the bottom of the rubber bumper really nice and snug, sticking up about 3/8 of an inch, and that's what's going to be giving you the airstream into this hatcher. So if we drop this in, it fits nice and snug in the bottom and totally watertight. So now we have, looks like this. Then this will sit on the shelf that has a hole cut into it that goes to the air outlet to go ahead and power the filter. So we'll go ahead and get these ready, but then there's one more thing still to do before we're done. What you need to do now is block up that bottom hole, set it up, and then put in it 4 liters of water. So that way you know exactly where your 4-liter level is. And what I will do is I'll put a piece of electrical tape on both sides of it, so that no matter how I place this on the shelf where it's going to be, I'll be able to always see where the level should be. And I'll put it in at the 4-liter mark, and then that tells me I add 4 tablespoons of salt to this to make a batch of brine shrimp. So I'll get that done, we'll get that tape put on, and I'll meet you downstairs, and we'll get these guys hooked up and running some brine shrimp. Now here's all 4 of them working. When I put them in place, the flared tops on the new plastic ones were just a little too large, and to my surprise, they took 4-liter, 8-liter, or 12-liter levels. So I filled it up to the 8-liter spot on these 2 guys, and most of these guys can handle is 4 liters. So each one of these does as much as these 2 guys do. You want to have just enough air in so that it's moving, that the eggs are moving. You don't want it to be too turbulent because it'll just tear up the babies when they're born. And so that's it, working away. Looks like it came out pretty good. I might move that front bottom one a little bit forward and to the left a little bit. But I've got them staggered the way they are so that I can do 2 at a time and get both of them out when I have to change them without bothering the other 2. So, mission accomplished. I get people to write me occasionally saying that they have trouble hatching brine shrimp, and they've either given up on it or they would like to know better about what they do or what mistakes they're making. The way I do it here has become fairly consistent over the years. I did get a refractometer here that I use occasionally, and I just was checking it for a few months when I first got it, just to see where my variations in the way I set it up usually fall between and where my best hatches were. But it's turned out that it really hasn't been all that necessary, as I really haven't lost a batch in a long time. So in this case, we've got the previous 2 brine shrimp hatchers. The holes in the bottom there are where the new ones are going to sit. And these guys, I have a piece of tape on the inside of each that shows where the 4-liter level is. So I fill it up to that. And then to each one of these, I add 4 tablespoons of salt. Now that comes from the days when I hatched brine shrimp into 2-liter soda containers, one upturned into the other one, and how to build one of those hatchers is shown at selectaquatics.com, and those work great and they went forever, and you would add 2 tablespoons to a 2-liter container and 1 tablespoon of shrimp. Well, these guys are a little bigger, so I usually put in just slightly overflowing tablespoon and put in 4 of them per breeder, and then 2 tablespoons of shrimp. So when it's done, it looks like this. And then here they are, cranking away. It's a Tuesday afternoon, so I'll probably harvest these guys first thing Thursday morning. I'll look at them tomorrow evening if it's been particularly warm and I've got fish where I want to hatch 24-hour brine shrimp. If you let them go to 36 or 48 hours, they grow larger, they molt a number of more times. So when you have really small fish that can still take brine shrimp, you want to go with 24-hour brine shrimp if you can. The salt concentration on these guys with the refractometer is just under 0.02, which is about where it usually is. So these guys are get ready, and we're going to now set up for the new hatchers. Back around 1996 or so, I was fortunate enough to visit the fish room of Jim Alderson, who's probably the nation's top guppy breeder. And his red lines, his A and B red lines, deltas, were like the standard of guppy breeding for many years, and they probably still are. rows of 90 gallon tanks. It was just the most amazing thing, and I was like totally intimidated and just walking around and, you know, the eyes agog and such. And at one point he's describing the fish to me and showing me the different lines and things he looks for and such. And he says, "Do you mind if I feed?" And I said, "No, not at all." So he goes over and gets a white bowl, a ceramic bowl out of a refrigerator, and with a turkey baster, and starts just feeding brine shrimp to the tanks. And I look over at the bowl, and I'm staring at the bowl, and he looks at me like kind of odd, like, you know, "What's up with you?" And I said, "Well, how did you do that?" He says, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, those brine shrimp are like, there's no shells. It's totally orange." And he looked at me and kind of smiled, and he never told me. So at that time I was so intimidated, I didn't really ask or push it. But ever since then, I've been trying to find ways of coming up with a good brine shrimp afterwards that don't have any shells. I'm not perfect, but the way I use now is not bad. I'm kind of happy with it. It's taken me many years to come up with this, and I'll show you how I do it. The way I do it is, now these batches are ready to be harvested. They were put together in here on Friday at about 2 in the afternoon, and it's now Sunday morning. So it's a little bit more than 36 hours, but you can see they've got a nice pink hue to it, so they're ready to be harvested. You wouldn't want to let them go more than about maybe 2 or 3 hours from this, or they'll start to break down. And we won't know if they've broken down a little bit already. We'll find out when we drain them out and see how what the water looks like. So anyway, we'll go ahead, and the first thing we do is to do these one at a time. We'll do the one on the right first. So I reach down here and turn off the air to it. So that now we've got that one going, this one's off. And then reach in and turn the light off. Okay, so I let that sit now for about 5 or 10 minutes. Well, about 5 minutes. Probably not too much more than 5 minutes. So it's now about 5 minutes later, and I have at the ready my little bucket there with my trusty brine shrimp net. So we're going to go on down and unattach this, put it into the net. I'm going to let it drain on in. What I'll do sometimes is take a piece of wood here, have it sit, just hold everything in place so that the air hose doesn't go flying. Alright, so now we just keep an eye on this guy here until it starts draining down. Now you can let it go for longer than 10 minutes, but you don't want to suffocate the brine shrimp and have them die when they're sitting here, because of course the aeration is off. And in the time that it's dark and it sits, the brine shrimp fall to the bottom and the eggs shells float to the top, the cyst shells. So anyway, the cyst shells will stay at the top. The brine shrimp now are draining down. You'll see how nice and red that is there. But you got to keep an eye on this, because when it starts getting low and starts hitting the funnel, the rate of the brine shrimp draining through increases, and you want to make sure to be there and pull the hose out of the net in time so that all the shells don't wash their way down through the mix and kind of ruin your batch. Although there is a way to fix that problem if it happens to you, and I can explain that after we all get done, so what happens if that happens and how to fix it. But in this case, we want the eggs, the shrimp, to stay as shell free as possible, and right now that's what's draining down into the net. Okay, it's been about 3 minutes now, and if you can see, it's draining down and it's just hitting the top of the funnel. So this is the time when I go ahead then and I turn off this one to stop it air and turn its light off, so that by the time the first one is done, the second one will be ready to drain. So now this is the time that you don't want to leave and walk away. You'll see the batch is looking really good there, nice bright and red. Because if you walk away and you miss, you can see it's starting to drain pretty quickly now. So if you miss where it goes on through, like I say, then all the shells get siphoned down into the drained down into the bottom, and you got a mess. So, but this way, I watch it, and then when it gets to about 2 inches or so, 2.5 inches from the very bottom, then I go ahead quickly and move the hose from the bottom out of the net so that the shells don't come through. Okay, we're getting right toward the bottom. Now it's time to pull it out. We'll reach down here, remove our piece of wood, get this out of here, and now you'll start seeing that this long trail of all the eggs and stuff will start coming out. You can see it coming out now. There it is. So those are all of the eggshells. And the water's not bad. It's not too red, so this was a good time to harvest these brine shrimp. So from here, put aside, we lift this guy on up, let it drain out a bit, and then we have ready over here another container with about, maybe an inch of water in it. These guys are going to go over here. So the brine shrimp now are then put into this container and set aside. We go back over here, and now we do the same thing again for the other side. Take this on in here, let the brine shrimp drain on down. You kind of don't want the end of the hose up against the net. You want the fluid to be as free as possible, and that's part of the reason for the wood here. Yes, now the end is sitting out here. You can see it's the opening is not obstructed, and we'll go ahead and we're going to go ahead and drain this guy on down. Okay, so all the shrimp is here now, and from here it goes over to the freezer. So we're going to bring it on around here to our Intrepid fish freezer. Door open. Set this on in here. Alright, they're going to stay there now for at least 15 minutes, not more than an hour. At an hour it starts to skin over and freeze, and then it gets hard to get them out of there. So you don't want to freeze it solid, otherwise the only alternative is to thaw the whole thing and then feed them all in one batch, which you don't really want to do. And so anyway, we'll keep an eye on the time and then go back and get them here in a little bit. Okay, here it is at about 35 minutes in the freezer. The rack it's sitting on is got the air pumps and such, and that's the reason for the vibration. But it's sitting as still as probably just about any surface is down here. Oh, there we go. That way you don't see the shaking as much. But the water begins to thicken up a little bit by this point, which is kind of cool because it makes getting the brine shrimp out of here with the turkey baster a little easier. So with the turkey baster, you go ahead and pull it on out. Now you'll notice that there are some shells that will come up around the surface, and you can pull those away if you like. There is a little bit of shells down in the mix you can see there, but it's minimal. I've never really lost any fish from claiming to feed shells. Although I will often just take the orangish shells when I'm feeding, say, something like the Odessa barb fry, where, for instance, I don't want to take the risk that there's any shells in the mix, but I don't know that it makes that much difference. Now, to get these out of here is pretty simple. It's a little more complex because, as you'll see here, I use a number of turkey basters, and the reason there's so many here is because they all have different aperture sizes. So I use a bigger aperture so that I don't break up the brine shrimp when I pull it out of here. This particular brand I like. I don't even know, couldn't tell you what it was. But I just go to places and I buy up 4 or 5 of them at a time and then throw the rest away that I don't use. But anyway, so you just go on out of here, and when you siphon it on up, you'll see that because the water's cold,
you get very little of it thrown up into the water column. And then, just go ahead and put them down into the waiting ice cube trays. You can see how firm that stayed. And so now when you go ahead and you go to freeze these, you're going to have nearly solid cubes. And you can certainly fill them as full as you like. One of the ways to ensure that you get, good full cubes is to use it, put as little water in here as so there's very little extra water in here. But if you stay under the bottom, the water's cold enough and thick enough, then getting them out of here and putting them in the ice cube trays is not a problem at all. So what happens if you screw up and you end up draining all the way down into the net, down in the bottom container? The whole business goes through, all the shells and everything else. So then what? Well, you can take the container that you end up with then, put it in the freezer as I just did with those guys, let it go for about 20 minutes, and the brine shrimp really do a good job of falling to the bottom, which is what's going on in there now, and the cyst shells floating to the top. And then with a turkey baster, it's a little time intensive and a bit of a pain, but with a turkey baster then, you can siphon off gradually the eggshells off the top and remove them from the batch, so you end up with almost as clean a batch as you would have had if you hadn't forgotten them. So it can be fixed. Now when I'm making my brine shrimp ice cubes, I like having them, I have uses for both having them like on the left where it's like solid brine shrimp for almost the entire cube, or like on the right where it's a good single feeding into a tank kind of thing. On the left I would take that with a couple others, put it into one of the small Glad containers like you just saw, and then feed it into the tanks with a turkey baster. On the right I would just walk around and plop those into the tank at about that depth. So when I freeze them, I try to do it in such a way that I create some of both kinds of batches, or I'll have batches where I'll just have half-filled cubes and some where I'll just have solid cubes.
Thank you for watching this video on the brine shrimp hatchers. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, I was really focusing on trying to build out a couple of my species. Well, one of those species is Forever Montezuma. I really want to focus on and really want to have them do well and get them out into the hobby. I'm having a problem with my line, and I now have 14 tanks of them here, 30 gallons and above. I have been shipping very few of them out, and the reason is because about 15 to 20% of them are coming out with a defect in their body. Appears their stomachs are somewhat flat. It's not a live bear disease. It appears to be some kind of a genetic thing. It's coming up as I'm breeding them out in really large numbers. So I'm pulling those fish, culling those fish, focusing on the healthy ones, building those out. And in the process of going through that and what's here and how they're coming along, the point of this is that those fish with the flat stomachs don't grow out to become full-sized, really nice Montezumas. And I don't want to ship anything to anybody that isn't going to come out to look as exactly as you would expect a Forever Montezuma to grow. So this has been my focus for about easily the last year. And so I've been taking video clips and such, and I'm putting that together, and I'm going to be putting out a video to show the progress I've been having with the Montezumas, where they are today, how they're coming along, and hopefully that I'll be getting them out to more of the waitlist customers. I will never do a wait list again, and the reason is because with the Montezumas, people call me all the time to be put on the wait list, which is fine. I put them on the wait list. Today, unfortunately, I have over 200 people on the wait list. So I'm doing my best to send out fish as they come along. Sometimes if I've got them going and you write me and you say, hey, I really want them, if I can spare them, I'll send them out to you. But right now I'm not shipping any because of this defect. I want to get that solved, and I want to be sure that you can come here to me for that fish and get really top quality fish. Constantly working at it, and hopefully we'll be there shortly. But I'm going to be giving you a video here, putting it together to show you exactly what's going on and what I'm trying to do. So I'll see you when that comes out in another couple of weeks. Thank you.